Greetings, classmates and teacher. My name is Roman Garcia, and I am pleased to show you my chosen course, which is sponsored by Macmillan Education. This course, as you can see in the screen, are intended for teenagers and for young adults. However, it is not implied that it can be worked with adults. Since this is a very complex and a very complete course, and this, as you can see, is split into 4 levels, which in this case I will show you the level 4, which in this case is intended for B1 learners. So it's like intermediate, advanced, either for teenagers and for adults. All right, let's move on then to the course. Here, the course is divided into 8 units. These units have grammar, reading, listening, and speaking activities. This course is intended to be completed into 8 to 1 year of length. It also has the workbook, but I'm going to focus more in the contents. As I click here, you will be able to see the 8 units and the vocabulary, the grammar, the reading parts. For instance, in Unit 1, the contents are: we focus first on literature, the vocabulary, literary genres, compound nouns. On grammar, we see a simple past and past progressive and past perfect. And on reading, we have 2 small stories that reinforce the vocabulary and the grammar seen in Unit 1. So this course tries to be very complete and to aim into the 4 main skills: the listening, the speaking, the writing, and the reading. On the other hand, on Unit 2, as you can see, it's called Sports Grades 24, and the vocabulary seen in Unit 2, obviously, is vocabulary for sports and also confusing verbs. On the grammar part, we see the passive, the simple present, simple past, and will be going to, and the passive questions in simple past, simple present, will, and going to. And we have other 2 stories that reinforce the knowledge of the target language. Then we move on to Unit 3, A Healthy Planet. So we focus on environmental issues and nature idioms. On the vocabulary part and on the grammar part, we see future progressive and future perfect. These are the readings that we worked on Unit 3, Carbon Offsetting, The Future of Oceans with Dr. Francisco Vargas. So as you can see, also, the book is intended not only to teach the target language and to be able to communicate in English, but also to gain knowledge about the world, the environment, and some other interesting topics that would be useful to know in the future for general culture, for manners, or just even for fun. To continue on Unit 4, it's called Career Paths. We have From the vocabulary part, the careers and the adjective plus noun collocations. On the grammar part, we see the present perfect progressive and the past perfect progressive with two additional stories called What's Your Plan and Life as an Au Pair, a personal account. On Unit 5, Money Matters, we see personal finances and banking vocabulary. And moving on to the grammar, we see phrasal verbs and wishes if only. As a complementary task, we have two readings: Financial Literacy for Kids and Tips from a Young Billionaire. On Unit 6, Mind and Body, we see mental health and healthy habits vocabulary, and third conditional with mixed conditionals as the grammar target for Unit 6. At last but not least, with Unit 7 and Unit 8, Virtual World and World of Music, we see developing products, reporting verbs, and music negative prefixes on the vocabulary part for these units. And from the grammar part, we have reported speech questions, and we have the passive, the simple in the simple present and simple past tense, the active passive, and with its respective tenses. So this is pretty much the content or the syllabus that we follow in this course. As again, I repeat, this is intended for B1 students. So these are teenagers and adults that have background in the language, that have a bit of experience learning it. They are not in the basic levels, so they can work at this pace among 8 to 1 year of working with this course. The course is very interactive. Let me show you a sample from Unit 1 Literature. Okay, so we are now in the content and the heart of the lesson. Unit 1, as I said before, it's literature, and as we can see, we have some pictures, and we start right away with the target language of the vocabulary literary genres. As you can see here, the vocabulary is presented in an answer box, which contains the vocabulary intended to see in this lesson, which, for instance, is literary genres: adventure, autobiography, biography, comic, crime, fantasy, historical fiction, non-fiction, play, poetry, romantic novels, science fiction, short story, and thriller. So this vocabulary is related to literary genres, and in the first activity, it's presented the vocabulary written but also graphically or with images. As you can see, there are some pictures of some literary genres that the students need to identify according to their experience and their personal background. They need to identify it, and once they identified which picture corresponds to which literary genres, they need to put the number on it. For example, thriller number 4, we have here the representation of these literary genres. On the other hand, on historical fiction number 3, we have the right image that corresponds to it, and so on. Then we would listen a recording that expresses a small story and a small description of literary genres. For example, it says, I enjoy books that are set in different periods. For example, in the 18th century, you should read historical fiction. So they are listening some clues, and they need to figure out which recommendation they need to do according to the taste of the author. Then, moving on to the activity 4, they need to choose the correct words. So now they need to read, and according to the context, they need to select which is the best option to work with. For instance, letter A, my brother's really interested in space. He's always reading science fiction books because he's the best literally genre that fits into his needs or into his interest. B, we're studying poetry by Lorca at school. C, I just read a great crime or fantasy, which is fantasy book. The main character was a dragon. So this will help the students on their reading skills to infer and identify the vocabulary seen in class. This could be either this could be done either in pairs or individually. Both works. Then we have also a small listening practice. Three characters, David, James, and Rachel, and they need to, as they listen to the recording, they need to identify who is talking and what literary genre is that person interested in. For example, David is interested in comics, James in adventure story, and Rachel into plays. To end up the lesson of the vocabulary, we have a reading. This reading is a literary product from Arthur C. Clarke, and they could read it in group. Here, the teacher can work as a guide and as a monitor. So he or she can listen, reading the students and how they are going to identify and to answer the respective task. Once the class finishes reading, then the coming up questions are to made by the teacher or in group, same, just to double check their understanding according to the literary genres as you can see here in the screen. And that's pretty much a sample of the first unit with the first vocabulary scene, literally generous. I appreciate your time and I'll be looking forward to see your proposes. Thank you again and have a wonderful week.